All right, we're back with another episode of the Superwall podcast. Today we have your founder's favorite founder on here, Stephen Cravotta, the founder of PuffCount. Really, really cool story from building PuffCount out in its literal beginning stages, figuring out how to scale and grow the app, scaling it even further with paid ads, and eventually exiting. And if you've looked at Twitter at all, I'm sure you've seen a lot of his really valuable content and his journey of going through and building PuffCount and eventually scaling and selling and all of the new stuff that he's building next. So just want to set the stage. Steven, how's it going, boss?
Good, man. Good, Taylor. Thank you for having me on the pod. I'm a big fan of Superwall and the product, and it was one of the core tools that I used that helped me grow and eventually sell. So happy to be here.
That's awesome. We love founders as evangelists. I feel like it's the best way to like actually have marketing. It's just people who have like had success using the tool. So we appreciate that shout out a lot.
100%.
Yeah, I wanted to basically just like start off with like an introduction. Like, could you give us a little bit more about sort of like your background, and then we'll dive into PuffCount and get into all the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Steven. I build, scale, and hopefully exit multiple viral mobile apps. And this journey started a long time ago when I was in high school. I was always an entrepreneurial type kid. And then I watched The Social Network one evening and I was like,
Mm.
this is the coolest thing ever. So I need to learn how to build websites. Started
Yeah.
doing that, which eventually led into building mobile apps. And we're here now. I started building out simple little games. And then in college is when I actually built PuffCount out of a need for myself. I
Mm.
got addicted to vaping. My friends got addicted to vaping. So I was like, okay, I can use this skill set that I have instead of building, a dumb little game. I can actually help people with this tool.
Mhm.
So that was kind of how I got the idea for PuffCount. And now I'm moving on to, even bigger projects. So
That's awesome. I love that the social network is like the proverbial gateway drug for a lot of startup founders. Like I've heard that several times before, and I would be remiss if I didn't include myself in that cohort and group. That's awesome. Okay, so cool. So let's for those who might not know, tell us a little bit more about what Puff Count actually is. And I know you gave us a little piece there, like you got addicted to nicotine. Would love to hear a little bit more about what the app actually was and how it functions, and then we can go from there.
100%. So when I was in college, is kind of when Juul hit the market really hard, and almost overnight, everyone had a Juul in their hands or a vape in their hands. And I started hitting one and got addicted pretty quickly, as all my friends did. And one day I was like, dude, how many times do you think we hit these every day? And
Mhm.
my friend was like, I have no idea. And I was like, okay, that's something interesting there because everyone wanted to kind of know. And we also wanted to quit, a way to like wean off. So I started to do a little bit of research, and came to find that like as long as you reduce your usage over time, it becomes easier to quit. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna build a product around this. So that was how the idea for PuffCount came. PuffCount is a mobile app that tracks how much you hit your vape every single day and helps you slowly reduce your usage over time, so that you can hopefully quit and it's a little bit easier and you get less side effects.
That's sick. Okay, so cool. So you're obviously very much a believer in the idea of like build for yourself then.
100%.
Yeah. And I feel like that's something that's really interesting because obviously, we've seen a lot of founders who have like different sort of like journeys or ways that they got into sort of building. But I think that the most interesting set of those founders are those who build for themselves, just because like if you end up building a product and you're the only user who uses it, there's still like some degree of use, right? But I think it's even like, if you take it like a layer deeper, it's a little more interesting than that because um, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like if you're building for yourself. I feel like you have some more innate feel for like how the app should function, how it should be designed, right? Like you're not off in this like esoteric like design class world of like doing, some research or something that feels kind of like arbitrary. Like tell us a little bit more about what that was like to build something like just for you, for like audience of one to start.
No, you're exactly right. When you're building something for yourself, you are the ideal customer. So you're absolutely right. Like building the product is so much easier because you know what you want.
Mhm.
And more likely than not, other people have the problem that you're experiencing, right? And that was also another one of the ways that like I validated the idea. I had my friends around me who had the same problem. Vaping was going crazy viral on social media. So
Mhm.
I just had the utmost conviction and I knew I would be able to build the product better than anyone else.
Mhm.
There were a couple others on the store, but none that really, hit on this core feature of tracking your puffs every day, which became like the core, marketing pain point that we really dug into.
Absolutely. Okay, so cool. That's really cool. So you basically like you saw the core problem in the vaping space because you experienced it yourself. You saw that your friends were going through it too, and this was sort of like the impetus for obviously you building it. I feel like one of the early questions that a lot of people have early on is like, how do you even validate this idea? And so I think in like your case where you're building for yourself, right? There's some like early validation just because you're the one building it, right? I'd love to know a little bit more about like, dude, how did you validate that like other people wanted this too? Like, were you passing the app to your friends? Were you asking them for their like thoughts and perspectives, or was this just you up until a certain point?
Yeah, I mean, it was asking my friends. Again, it was looking on social media and seeing that there was a bunch of viral videos around vaping. So I knew that, marketing it would be very easy.
Mm,
And just like experiencing my everyday life, like Juul was everywhere. They were being sold everywhere. I was seeing a bunch of people vaping. So, and then you can look at like Google Trends or Sensor Tower. I
yeah.
looked at Sensor Tower too to see that these other quit smoking cigarettes apps were like crushing it, but there was
Mm,
nothing for quitting vaping. And
mm,
I just like all those things together, and I just saw the future is not a cigarette future, it's a vaping
right,
future.
right.
And I think that's definitely played out. um but yeah, all those things put together just gave me utmost conviction on the idea. And I feel like a lot of people get caught up in trying to like make TikToks and make a landing page and get a bunch of emails that you
Mhm,
capture before validating your idea.
mhm.
I just had conviction and I built it.
Yeah,
So like I built the product without ever doing a single piece of marketing because I knew it would work,
that's
right?
sick.
So like
Yeah.
taking a marketing first mindset into any, new venture is, I think, the best way to start. Like think marketing first, because if you can get people to your product, it doesn't matter how crappy it is,
Mm,
because that can always be improved over time,
mm,
right?
mhm.
Like if we look at the first version of PuffCount, I actually have this sketch right here,
Yeah,
bro.
let's see it.
And we can get into my process of
Dude,
how I
I love this.
dude, this is the OG sketch of what
And I
PuffCount.
feel like you've posted this on Twitter, right? If people want to go see like a high res image of the sketch.
Bro, I do this for this is my new app right here.
That's
This is how
that's
it
sick.
started. These are the OG sketches, and I keep these as like on my
Mhm,
desk to like remind myself of,
mhm.
But you have to have conviction, and the marketing first approach is so important because the first version of your app is always going to be like really poor, right?
Right.
But you slowly improve over time. But if you launch the app and you have no marketing plan, or there's no way to market the app, or you haven't validated like the viral marketability of it, you're
Mhm.
screwed, because you could have the greatest app in the world, but if no one's coming to your front door, like you can't make a business out
100%.
of that.
That makes sense, right? It's like you could have I mean like in a scenario where you have the best product in the world and zero marketing, like you're going to lose every single time to someone who has even like 1% marketing and a very poor product, right?
Exactly.
So wait, that's really interesting. There are two things there that I think I definitely want to like double click on. The first is I mean, they kind of tie into each other. The first one was like, how did you think about the app's like core functionalities? And I think the interesting thing that I want to tap into there is you said you started with like a marketing first mindset. Like
Right.
you saw the problem with yourself, you saw that your friends shared the problem. So you're like, okay, this is like a thing that people have. You saw that there were sort of other apps out there in kind of like similar verticals and niches, right? Just for like quitting smoking, but not one for quitting vapes. Honestly, that's interesting because I think a lot of people would kind of like quit early and be like, oh well, like they'll take the market, right? But the thing that I want to double click on that I think has like been more of a shift, especially with like the success of a lot of consumer apps that we've seen, certainly a Superwall, is like this marketing first mindset. Like, can you walk me through a little bit more about that? Because I think for a long time, so many people have had this idea of like the way that you build a product is you like start with the design, you build out the features, you make a fully fleshed product, and then you think about marketing, right? And you're kind of inverting that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it just gives you, that is your validation and conviction, right? Like the trend right now is like these art studio Ghibli style like images that everyone's creating with ChatGPT or whatever the flavor of the month is, right?
Yeah.
And that's more of like a flash in the pan. But when there's something like quitting vaping and there's all these people posting on social media about it, and they're going viral and they're talking about how hard it is to quit, like I knew that I could capture a percentage of that market. Like I knew, seeing all these viral posts, they were really easy to recreate. So I knew that, this product would crush
Yeah.
because the marketing was already there. The marketing was already done for me, right? Like,
Mm.
and one of the biggest strategies in marketing is figuring out what other people are doing to go viral in that space
Hmm.
and kind of adapting to that style, like studying what other people are doing. And I like just watching these TikToks on my phone. I was like, bro, I could create these TikToks in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's no way I can possibly fail with this product.
I love that. Okay, so and then the last thing before we move on to like the actual app, like you keep referencing this like conviction. Like I knew that I could recreate these TikToks. Like I knew that this app would go. I think a lot of people like for whatever reason sometimes tend to struggle to listen to that voice in their head. Was that ever like a problem for you? Like did you ever doubt it, or what did like was it crystal clear? I'd love to hear like what that voice sounded like and how you were able to like have such like clear conviction.
So I think when you're looking on social media founders and even myself, right? Like I don't share like all the losses that I've had
Hmm.
in my entrepreneurial journey.
Hmm.
And I've had a million ideas, a million and one ideas, right? And
Yeah.
I've tried them all out, like whether it be drop shipping, e-commerce, well, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they failed. But what that taught me is, writing these ideas down in my notes on my phone and just experiencing, problems that I see in my everyday life. And I
Hmm.
write those ideas down. And when I go to sleep at night and I'm kept up by that one idea,
Mm.
and that consistently happens to me, there's like this one idea that I can't get out of my head and that I can't go to sleep because I'm thinking about it. I
Mm.
go after that.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I don't know if that's like something that's natural or other founders experience that, but like I just
Yeah.
knew this one idea was keeping me up at night. I knew I could crush it. And I've only felt that way a couple different times about certain products.
Mhm.
So I think it's something inside of yourself that you kind of just have to listen to, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes it's wrong.
Totally.
But every business that fails, and I've had apps that have flopped too, like some of
Mhm.
my games early on, but they all teach you something very important that kind of guides you into this ultimate, you know, place you need to be as a founder. Like without all those past failures, I wouldn't have succeeded with PuffCount the way it
Mm.
is today. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
um yeah, you gotta listen to that little voice in your head
Listen
sometimes.
to the voice. Listen to the voice. I like that. I also like that you're like I think a lot of people like will shy away from failure, right? Or they will take like failure as proof that they are like incapable of like success, right? And I
Right.
think that like the reason why I'm so curious about asking that is because I think if you ask like any successful founder, I think every single one will say, dude, I failed over and over and over, right? There's like that famous MJ quote. Like, I really think that's true. And it's like each failure is really just like fodder for you to learn a little bit more and like try again and create something better the next time, right? As cliche as that sounds, like I feel like you do see a lot of W's on social media or on Twitter or whatever, and it's like there's absolutely a graveyard of failures for most people. For most people.
100%. It's part of the
Um,
process. Trust the process.
Trust the process and listen to that voice. Sick. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to get into is like actually like the early development of the app. So um, I think a lot of people, for better or for worse, they tend to follow this process of like, I need to get the app to be like perfectly polished, like excellent before it even sees the light of day. And I have a feeling that you have a different opinion when it comes to when it comes to that strategy.
100%, 100%. And I mean, yeah, like you saw the sketch, and then I'll get into my process in a little bit, but
Mhm.
I think every founder falls into this trap of like, I need this app with a million different features and dark mode and all this stuff. But
Mhm.
ultimately, like, people who ask me for advice, like I always say, launch with one core feature.
Mhm.
One core feature, make it an MVP. It's not going to be the best, but
Mhm.
just launch that one core feature because you're going to save either time or money on development. You're
Mhm.
going to get to market quicker, and then you're going to get actual tangible feedback that you can build based off of,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I myself got caught up in this in PuffCount. Like it took me a long time. I wanted dark mode and all this stuff.
Right.
Luckily, I had a developer and a team who was like, "Bro, you don't need that. Like, trust me. Just trust me on this."
They were the
So
voice of reason. That's
they
funny.
were,
Yeah.
they were. So we launched with like a super basic feature functionality, which was
Mhm.
track your puffs every day, and it was like a
Mhm.
button on the app. It was very straightforward and easy.
Yeah.
Um, but again, the concept crushed. So I was able to drive users into the app, get
Mhm.
feedback, whether it be on social media or in the app store reviews or whatever. And then
Mhm.
I built based on that feedback. Like I'd listen to my users, what they wanted. And then once the app already had traction, once I was generating a little bit of cash, it made it so much easier for me to make um, data driven decisions. Like
Mm.
after you launch your product, you should really never be guessing on what you're doing next. You should do it all based on, what you're seeing happen inside your app and what your users are experiencing.
Right. I love that. Okay, so you like I like that because it's kind of like in the earlier phases of like product building and like building the app, right? Like a lot of people can get stuck on like adding all these features, but it's more like it's more time efficient and maybe just like efficient in general to just launch with one core feature. You're gonna be guessing because you can't get anyone into the app other than like yourself or some friends. But once you launch, that is like the impetus for you to be able to start making more informed decisions and not guessing. And so you're basically saying like, dude, it's you're going to go much faster just by building something simple that you can actually then get like real data on, real feedback, as opposed to just like leading with heart of one, right? In sort of like the product development process.
100%. And like
Okay.
the marketing mindset and the easy to launch MVP kind of go hand in hand, right? Because
Yeah.
I knew that the marketable aspect of this was showing people how much they vaped every day.
Hmm.
And that's the only feature that I built into the app.
Yeah.
One feature, one marketing point, and it crushed. Like
Right.
that's all you need to start.
Absolutely. And I think that one's like that particular feature is really cool because it accomplishes a lot with like very little, right? Like um one someone like seeing how much they vape every day, like it kind of like throws the problem in their face, right? About like, I'm vaping a lot. But it's also really interesting because literally by tapping in the app, there's some form of like stimulus and engagement there, which is cool. Like for better or for worse, dude, we all live in like monkey bodies, right? And like it's fun to like tap something, feel a vibration, like number
Yeah.
go up. And the other thing that's really interesting about that is I'm sure it like skyrockets retention and engagement on the app, right? Because like there's something to do. So I'd be curious to know, like, did you even think about any of that beforehand, or were you
I
just like,
had
this
I
is like
hadn't
the thing?
I had no idea. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you because I was working on this project for 4 years. I couldn't tell you the mindset that I was in when I first built the project,
Mm,
but it turned into something completely different. And exactly what you touched on there. Once I launched the app, I realized that no one cared about quitting, which is the reason
that's funny.
the reason I built the app was to help people quit. That was
Mhm.
the whole goal of the app. But then I discovered no one really cared. All they wanted to know was how many times they're hitting their vape per day,
Mm,
for better or
mhm,
for worse.
mhm.
And some people try to compete with their friends to get the most hits or whatever, like this dumb
Right.
stuff that you see on TikTok.
Right.
But the product, because I put it out there and it was like flexible and it was simple enough, I realized that it became a habit discovery tool.
Mm,
So people
mm.
would download PuffCount, realize how much they hit their vape every day, and then it just so happened that I had the other features to help you quit, like
Right.
the weekly or monthly graph that would show your usage over time and would
Mhm.
help you quit. So that was how I got people in, and then there were more features under that kept them engaged, kept them coming back to the app.
That's really cool. And you built all of those out after you had that sort of like initial feedback. Cool, cool. Just reinforcing for anyone listening. So that's really, really interesting because I I feel like that is also like a rite of passage in some sense for founders where it's like you start with trying to like solve one particular problem, and then you get to this point and it's like you might pivot a little bit, or your product might be used in a slightly different way than you intended, right? And it actually uncovers like just more structure and more surface area for you to cover, right? Like that's really, really interesting. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'd be curious to know, like, okay, so you went through like building the app. Let's talk a little bit about that. So you have did you build the app yourself?
I didn't write a single line of code in the app.
Okay, this is awesome because I think a lot of people, like, with the advent of like ChatGPT, like certainly like Blake Anderson, founder of Cal AI, like really, really big evangelist with like, you can build these things yourself in Cursor. And I think that's true. Like I think that the tools today are like excellent, but I think a lot of people are like maybe discouraged or like, take themselves out of the game because they aren't technical or they can't code an app. Would love to hear, like, dude, what was that process like for you?
I'm a big proponent in investing more into my strengths and outsourcing my weaknesses.
Hmm.
In the early days, I built my first little games, mobile apps, and it took me forever to develop them, right? And I was like, all right, this is a bit of a waste of time. But what I was really good at was marketing those products.
Hmm.
So that's what I stuck with. I did the marketing and then I would outsource the development. So
Hmm.
how I built PuffCount was literally I sketched out the idea, right?
Yep, love that.
On a piece of paper. I had a Google Doc and I still have this Google Doc today. It's like a 27-page document of just like all my crazy little ideas and like everything that I could ever think about marketing, competitors, whatever it may be. So I took this sketch in that Google Doc to 99 Designs, ran a UI design competition where I
Mm,
got like 80 different designers to build out the app and what the UI should look like, right? And I
mhm,
only paid for the winner. I put up like $800 for this.
mhm.
So that was my UI. And then once I had my UI, I brought it to a developer and I was like, make this come to life.
Yeah.
So I hired a team. They were based in the US. I think that a lot of their development team was out of Eastern Europe though, and they crushed
Mm,
it and
nice.
launched with my first MVP. And then it was there, man. Like that was my investment. The 99 Designs contest was like $800, and then
Yeah.
the development agency, I definitely overpaid. Now I
Right.
understand like the freelancer game and stuff like that, but it was
Right.
around like 10, 12 G's.
Okay.
Um, and then it was there. It was live on the store, and all I had to do was market it, man. So like
Wait, that's really cool. Okay, so it's 99 Designs, basically a place where you can go and like host a competition for designers to build like UI or design anything for you, right? And that's still around today. Um, and then you paid an agency. So that's really interesting. You went like 10, 12 grand in the hole like before you even could start marketing. That's conviction. Like a lot of people wouldn't really do that today.
dude, I mean, it's the curse of a founder, right? Like I
Yeah.
didn't care. Like I'd rather go to zero. I didn't have that much money saved up in college. Like,
Yeah.
I did a little bit of crypto stuff here and there. And I
Right.
got blessed on like the Bitcoin run up. So I had
Right.
like I was pretty much all the cash that I had saved. And I
Hmm.
threw it all into PuffCount.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can't not be building something, you know what I mean? I gotta put
Right.
my money to work. It usually never sits around.
Right. That's really cool. Okay, so I'm sure that the 99 Designs inspired the new company that you're building, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. But just really quickly there, like to touch on that, because I think that this is something that's really cool. Like I think a lot of people have this discussion around like proverbial like burning the boats, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, you spending that much money when you didn't have a lot like saved up is definitely an example of that. Like, how do you feel about like that philosophy in general?
Look, I was, a kid in college, right? And I
Yeah.
still am,
Hmm.
I'm 27 now, but like I
Yeah.
don't really have people that I need to take care of like
Hmm.
as an individual. So I can take the most risk right now in
Hmm.
my career. I think when you're young and you're able to take these risks and you have all this energy and you're like you can focus on multiple things multiple businesses at once or whatever it is, you have the ability to do that.
Hmm.
Um is it like the smartest thing? Like, should everyone do that? No, but like,
Right.
I also had some sort of a safety net because I was working at 9 to 5 out of college
Hmm.
as well.
Okay.
So I had a 9 to 5 job. I was doing this on the side. I had a million other hustles that I was trying to make cash with, right? Like,
Yeah.
this was my 5 to 9 after
Got it.
my
Got it.
day
Okay.
job.
Okay. So you spent a lot, but you were smart about it. It wasn't like this like heroic like this is my last dollar and I'm gonna like bet my life on it. Okay. Cool. 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 Um. Okay. So with that in mind, okay. So let's move on to like the really interesting part about like you've spent all this time and money. Like you've hired a dev agency. Like you've built the app. The app is in your hand. Now what? Like how did you get this in front of people? How did you grow it? Let's dive into that. What were some of the first steps that you took?
Dude, so I launched this probably like early 2020,
Mhm.
and I had seen all of it going viral on TikTok. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start to hire these creators on TikTok to post about my app. And
Yeah.
I did, and I, spent a couple $100 here, there, and the third place, and these kids made these videos and they all like flopped. And I was like,
Okay.
okay, these guys clearly don't get the marketing. They don't understand how to market my product, and this is like a complete waste of cash, right?
Mhm.
And also the app wasn't optimized. Like looking back, like I definitely
Mhm.
could have done better. Um, so I started posting myself, man. I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? Don't talk to me for the next 30 days. I'm making TikToks. I don't care. And
I love it.
this is back when,
D&D.
yeah, D&D mode on. And this is back when it was like pretty cringy to make TikToks.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat in my apartment. I had two roommates, and I would always get them, and we'd like do like skits together on TikTok because that was what was popping at the time.
Hmm.
And I posted my first two. They both flopped. And then I posted a video with actually my little brother doing this like skit of how I came up with the idea for PuffCount, and
Mm-hmm.
it got like 80,000 views, bro. It just like
Nice.
blew up.
Yeah.
Um, and that's still live on the page today. But once that happened, I was like this is I hit the gold mine.
That
Like,
was that was like a light bulb moment for you.
yeah, it took me 10 minutes to make the video. It
Hmm.
got 80,000 views, drove a ton of installs to the app, a ton of like comments, whatever it was. I was getting a ton of support. I was like, this is it. I spent no money doing that. And I
Hmm.
just made a TikTok and like, this is how I'm going to market the app.
Mm-hmm.
So I continued to post a TikTok every single day.
Hmm.
And the reason I knew what to post and was able to do all that is because I did market research, right? I went on TikTok, I went on Instagram, whatever, saw what was trending with vaping, quitting vaping, and I learned about what content was hitting in that niche and what to say and what the hook was and all this stuff. So I studied the content for like a good week, 2 weeks before I ever made my first piece of content, right?
Mm. Okay.
And you'll come to find out like making TikToks is not hard. And I think every founder should be in the trenches making some sort of content for their brand.
Hmm.
It teaches you such a valuable skill.
Hmm.
And it gets you closer to your audience and more connected with, the product and the marketing overall.
Totally. Okay, that's really 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 interesting. So you basically had this like this light bulb moment. You realize like, dude, there's this asymmetric upside, right? And like me spending 5-10 minutes of my time, I just drove whatever 100,000 views, however many hundreds of downloads,
Yeah.
um, so and then you were like, I'm just gonna make a habit of this. So those were sort of the early stages of growing it. At what point did you reach your next inflection point? Like, what was the next light bulb moment in growth? Like, we're in, and we, I know it was a long time ago, but I'd love to hear like sort of what you were thinking, like in your head. Were you like, okay, I'm just gonna do this, and like maybe I'll grow the app, and like I'll break even, like maybe I'll make a few $1,000s, or at this point, were you like really focused on like I'm gonna turn this thing into like a $10,000 a month SaaS? Like, give us a little bit of insight to what that was like.
Dude, it was so interesting because like had I known back then what I know now about the
Mhm.
app space, I could have like scaled that thing so fast. But
Yeah.
I like there was no blueprint. There was no blueprint for, the subscription based mobile app thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So like the first version of PuffCount was completely free. No hard paywall, no nothing, no
Really?
paywall in general. Yeah, it was
Hmm.
just features.
Yeah.
So if you hit a certain amount of puffs, you had to pay,
Okay.
and then everyone just dropped off.
I see. Okay.
So I started to like test around with different pricing strategies and tried different things out, but it took me a long time to really figure out, okay, I should probably do a subscription model because that's where the bread's at.
Mhm.
I kind of just relied on the monetization strategy that I was using, but I missed out on so much cash there just because I didn't have the knowledge to
Right.
know what to do next.
Right.
I
Right.
just
This
thought
is this is before this whole era of like hard paywall, create subscriptions, right? You're just you didn't know. Like no, it was still very early at that time.
right, it was much harder back then and like there was no blueprint. So I kind of just I coasted. Like I kept making TikToks, I kept growing the app and kept getting feedback and then, started to test around with different pricing strategies.
Okay, cool. So wait, that's really interesting. So walk us through what some of those like early pricing strategies were um and maybe contrast it to like what you would do differently. Like the whole like I would have made so much more money now. Like I'm sure people would love to have some insight into like how you might have done that differently, just made some more cash early on.
Well, so I like slow and this is another trap that I see a lot of founders fall into is like and I fell into it myself. I was like, my app isn't good enough yet for me to just charge people right out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
But that's complete BS, and that's like a glass ceiling type mindset thing that you just have to break through.
Hmm.
So I went from the app being completely free and you could pay for extra stuff to a soft paywall, which also didn't really convert because
Right.
everyone just closed out of that.
Right.
And then eventually, I committed to the hard paywall, and that is when the growth just went ballistic.
Mm.
Um, so that was kind of like an evolution as a founder. But I think right off the rip, like right out of the gate,
Hmm.
you should have a hard paywall. There's no
Okay.
reason not to. It's like it's the strategy now. And uh on top of that too, you should have a nice onboarding experience. Because if someone downloads your app and they hit a hard paywall, they're gone, right?
Mhm.
You need to have a nice onboarding experience. This is something that I realized later. Like once I added the onboarding experience before the paywall, it increased my conversion rate like another 10%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to get the users to invest a little bit of time into your app.
Hmm.
And the onboarding is also a place where you can make them think about their problem a little bit more, invest time, learn more about them, and then they hit the paywall and they're like, all right, well, I've already spent 5 minutes. I have to hit this paywall or I have to start the free trial to go into the app. I'm just going to do it because I've invested this time.
Right.
Right. So they feel a little bit more connected to the app.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was a long journey, man. Like I wish I had known that from the jump because TikTok was much easier back then too.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's really interesting. So you're like one of the frontiers. So wait, that's really interesting. So I've downloaded PuffCount and I've like gone through the onboarding process, and I think you do a really good job about like reminding the user of the sort of issue or problem that they're facing, right? And I think that there's like a lot of people who are looking for a blueprint, and I think that like some of the really actionable advice is like have a hard paywall, right? Like that's really effective, but I don't think there's as much of a blueprint when it comes to like onboarding. Some people think that I think some people can get caught in the trap of like, oh, there's so much friction to like see an ad on TikTok, like go to the app store, download my app. Like I don't want to like encumber them with
No, no,
anything.
no.
But
But
it
it's
sounds like you took the opposite approach.
it's it's good friction. You
Yeah.
want that. you want positive friction in your app because it's going to increase your overall conversion rate. Let's say 100% of people download your app, but only 80% hit the paywall. Well, those 80% are going to be much more likely to purchase. So it increases your conversion rate. Like, you don't really want the users who aren't willing to pay and who don't have the big enough problem aren't your users. Like, it's okay to lose them, type thing. And obviously you want as many people to stay through the onboarding as possible and convert, but this is all stuff that you A/B test. It's different for every app. It's all a psychology game. You have to put yourself in the user's shoes. And again, solving a problem for myself, I know very, very easily, right? Like, how can I walk this person through the problem to make it seem more painful and make it seem like they need my app as much as possible, right? I hired a behavioral scientist.
No way.
to build this onboarding funnel for me. And it was one of the best, investments I ever made. Bro, Upwork, I paid her like $200. And she put together this entire case study. She did all the research of previous medical studies and like all this stuff, all these surveys that people would send to smokers. And we picked the best ones. And I was like, hey, by the end of this onboarding funnel, I want the users to know what their problem is. I want them to know like all the side effects and stuff like this. And the conversion rate just skyrocketed after that.
That's really sick. I don't know if I've heard of people like going to that extent, but the fact that you did and you saw like a very real return on investment, I think is huge. And I think that's really interesting because it's like more. I feel like my opinion is like more app founders should go through the time and investment of like building that kind of onboarding process, right? Like priming the user, like making sure they understand that the problem that they're facing is like a very real problem.
Yeah. And you have to get them in like the first day, right? Because when they download your app, there's like a graph that I like to like explain to people. When they first download your app is when they care the most about it. Over time, they're only going to care less.
Right.
Because in the day and age of TikTok and whatever, everyone's attention span is all over the place.
Right.
So when you have them, you have to convert them in that moment.
Right.
Same with your advertising.
Right. Okay. So that's actually really interesting because I think that, the trap I was referencing earlier, where a lot of people, don't want to have this like longer sort of onboarding. They don't want to have friction. They want to make it frictionless. The intent for the user to solve their problem is just as you said. It's at the highest when they decide to leave TikTok and go download your app, right? So it's not as though this increased friction is like, making them shy away. Like it's actually beneficial, right? Because they have this problem in mind, and it's something that's very clear to them, and it is only helping to guide them towards the solution, right?
100%. And again, these were all database decisions that I made based on what I was seeing in the app, and because I had a ton of users coming in, I can make these decisions very quickly. It's always going to be different for every app. My onboarding is pretty long and extensive. Some might work better with a shorter onboarding. I've seen apps that crush it with no onboarding, just straight to the paywall. And I think it's very important when you're testing these things, you have to keep all of these different factors in mind, because the advertising, how you're getting someone into your app, will play a massive role into what your onboarding experience looks like, what your paywall looks like, right? I saw this app, it was like a coin identifier.
Yeah.
No onboarding, hard paywall. It was like the first screen, and they're crushing it, dude.
Crushing. Yeah.
But then I go look at their ads, and it makes sense because they're positioning the app as like scan coins, sell them, make money. The user already knows.
Right.
They don't need to be taught.
Right.
The advertising taught them what the purpose of the app is. Right. So doing an onboarding, you're just losing out on those valuable users who already know the problem. Paywall them, right? Yeah. It's always going to be different for every product. For my product, the long onboarding worked and crushed for me. It's a decision you have to make as a founder.
That's awesome. Yeah, like the context matters, basically, is what you're saying. So let's talk about that. I think that's a great segue into like sort of like the next phase of distribution. So you found some success like marketing, just yourself, and you're having users coming in, like you're starting to make these improvements and adjustments to the app, like you're seeing return on these investments. Like, what was the next step of that distribution? I know that you've talked about this on Twitter. I think it's going to be paid ads, but would love to hear a little bit more about what that was like.
It was exactly that. So, dude, I had this one video blow up and it got like 8 million views, and I got like 100,000 downloads in one day. And this is when I still had a free trial. This is when I had a soft paywall.
Yeah.
And it converted decent. Like I think the app went to like 8K MRR, but I was like, okay,
Mhm.
there's like I'm tired of getting all these views and like this app should be making a lot more money.
Mm,
So I made the conscious decision to switch to a hard paywall, which my
mm,
friend, shout out Mark, shout out Mugo on Twitter, he
mm,
convinced me to do a hard paywall. I was like, bro, I don't want to. It's gonna be a
mm,
bad experience for the users or like whatever dumb thought was going on in my mind. And I
mm.
did it. And overnight, my conversion rate went from like I was converting like 2% of users to like 25%.
That's a crazy
And
conversion rate.
I did it
Yeah.
through Superwall. And
And you
shout
get
out
nice.
also shout out to my developer Yuri who like set up Superwall for me. He's amazing, the most talented developer in the world.
Mhm.
We put that on, my conversion rate went to 25%. And I had this database of just TikToks that I had posted for years and years and years. So I uploaded my best ones to TikTok ads,
Mhm. Mm, mhm.
pressed the spend on my money button. And now that had the hard paywall, it was profitable from the jump.
That's crazy, man. Okay, so that's really, really cool. So you saw this massive potential basically with this like 8 million view video. It drove a ton of downloads. You're like, dude, I can scale this a little bit better, but like the monetization needs to hit harder. Superwall was basically your fan for that because or your tool for that because it allowed you to create like a nicely engaged, like, better designed paywall, monetization built in.
It
Oh
was
yeah. Wait.
Superwall was cool because like I didn't have to jump in with both feet. You know what I mean? Like because I
Mm,
was still skeptical about the paywall. Would it work? Would I get bad reviews? Whatever it was. And the coolest thing about Superwall is the A/B. Like you can remotely A/B test stuff. So I was like, okay, worst comes to worst, the hard paywall it sucks. It doesn't convert or people are pissed. I'll turn it off. I'll turn it off and like
mm.
whatever.
Yeah.
So that was the best part. Like there
Yeah.
was no risk to me mentally.
I love that. Okay, so cool. So then you basically went through and you're like, hey, here are pieces of content that have done really well. Like I'm going to pay TikTok to just scale these. And I think a lot of people actually don't know this. So I think it's probably worth mentioning. You did this on the TikTok website. You didn't do this in app, right?
Correct. Yeah, no, boosting
Okay.
posts.
So yeah, for those who might not know, there is a distinction between like I think some people fall. I've heard it and it's like it's so tragic. Some people fall victim to like promoting a
No,
post in the TikTok
dude.
app, and it's like they put on the 30% Apple fee, and it's not like it costs way more. So for anyone who's thinking about doing this, like do it through the website. Don't do it through the app. Um, yeah. Okay. So let's talk about like you've had like a few like light bulb moments. It sounds like this was another one of those like light bulb moments. So walk us through, I guess what the business was like after you started scaling these paid ads. Like what was your strategy towards scaling, and did you continue to do organic after? Like walk us through what that was like.
Yeah, so I'll start with the organic first. Once I found out that paid ads worked, I was like, dude, I'm going all in on this. And I had a couple creatives that just ran for like 12 months profitably,
Hmm.
right? And that was like all I focused on. To be honest, like I was pretty burnt out on making the content because I had done it for so long, so I
Right.
kind of stopped. I don't think anyone should ever stop doing organic content. You should do both,
Hmm.
which is a regret of mine, but I did. I just relied on paid ads.
Hmm.
And my main goal after that, once I knew it worked, was to increase my LTV because the problem now I have a new problem. Like the problem once I started running paid ads was, okay, I'm investing all my money into paid ads, but Apple takes a month to get me my money back. And I'm
Hmm.
trying to spend more and more and more and more to keep growing this thing. I don't have enough cash flow. Like the cash flow is now a problem. So
Right.
it became a matter of getting my return on investment back faster. So again, Superwall was great for this.
Hmm.
I A/B tested different price points, and I
Hmm.
tested $2, $4, $6, $9, $12, like all the way up to like whatever it was, and found my ideal price point where I got the highest LTV per customer.
Hmm.
Right. So at the peak of when I was running paid ads, I was getting a 3-to-1 return on ad spend like 2 months in after I had
Sick.
acquired the user,
Yeah.
which was really solid. And it after that it was game over. Like I just checked to make sure the ads were running profitably,
Hmm.
um, and that was it. All the work had been done. Right.
Right.
Like the app was built. It was optimized. We always made tweaks to like the onboarding funnel and switch stuff around.
Hmm.
But that was it, man. We just let it run.
That's sick. Okay, so you now at this point in the business, you basically a majority of the work is done. Like the app is built, like you have the funnel set up, like you're using Superwall to basically price test different points so you can figure out what is optimal, right? Like you're like, hey, I want to get the highest LTV. Like, obviously, like Superwall enables you to like test that really easily. And you're now getting to the point where it's like you basically have this machine where you're putting in $1 and you're getting 3 back, right? which is crazy. Like very, very few people on earth have like gone to that point. So at this point, like, would love to hear a little bit more about, you know, like, were you in the mindset of like, I want to keep improving this thing, or were you in the mindset of like, I'm gonna just keep scaling ads and like see how this goes? Like, where were you at this point in the business?
So with this type of approach, you know, you're kind of limited to the amount of capital that you can put into this. So there was sort of some sort of like ceiling that I had like personally where I couldn't keep it reinvesting into the app. So I was like, okay, I've scaled it this much. I feel like we're at a nice like peak here. I scaled it to like $44,000 per month at the peak. I was like, okay, I want to start to explore what an exit looks like because again, I had also been working on this this product for like 4 years.
Right.
So I was a bit burnt out. Like my day to day was me looking at my ads. Okay, they're good, and then I would do whatever else. You know what I mean? Which is a great position to be in, but I had other ideas that I wanted to go into. So I met up with a broker. His name is Orel, one of the most low key guys ever, but he does some of the biggest deals in the space. Like it was a blessing that I got connected with this guy. And he started to pitch the app, and he has like a Rolodex of larger studios. And we found one that, you know, kind of saw the vision and understood paid ads. And there's a lot of companies out there who don't like to acquire apps that are heavily reliant on paid ads. They want some sort of more turnkey approach where the app is crushing on organic ASO.
Right.
So we found a company that saw the vision with the ads, and they acquired it. So
And went from there.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So wait, let me back up a little bit just so like people have like a sort of a better understanding of like where you were at like in your life too at this point. So you'd been working on PuffCount for 4 years. At what point did you figure out like the ad scaling bit? Was that like year 3?
Dude, yeah, it was yes.
It was later on in the game. Okay. And at this point, were you still working your job, or had you gone all in on PuffCount?
No. So I mean, yeah. So I had my 9 to 5, and actually, I had a previous app that was called Wordle. It was a game app. I don't know if you've
Oh,
have you heard
yeah.
this.
This is a whole crazy story that we can get into as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a whole story of its own. But I sold another company previously before PuffCount. Um, so I wasn't working at my 9 to 5.
Right.
And I always had like other side businesses too, but no, it was just PuffCount at this point.
Okay. So you're scaling purely on paid ads, and you basically decide, you're like, hey, like what would an exit look like? You basically have this relationship with a broker, and you went through that whole like sort of process. I guess I'd be curious, like, dude, looking back, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently? You know, like I think a lot of people are like obviously aware of like the success that like CalAI or Quitter, you know, some of these other apps have done, and I think that they've achieved that by like creating these like really incredible distribution machines, right? But you were like earlier to the game, right? Like you've been doing this before any of these like really found success. So like looking back, is there, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. Is there anything that you wish you would have done differently?
I just wish I would have known about the hard paywall and the onboarding a little bit earlier. You bring up a good point though, because, and everyone talks about this, right? Is like, you know, I don't want to run paid ads. I could just hire influencers.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You have a customer acquisition cost. You have to pay the creators. And of course, the upside is much higher with creators.
Right.
But it's also not as black and white, right? I could pay a creator $10,000 and they could flop, or I could pay a creator $10 and they go crazy. So whether you're running paid ads, whether you're working with creators, there is some cost associated. And at some point, they all blend together. You look at Quitter, you look at CalAI, they're running paid ads on their best performing content, right? So the name of the game, whether you're hiring creators or you're doing the content yourself, or you're running paid ads, find organic content that works for you. Make it, hire people, whatever. Find a piece that works for you, scale it on paid ads. That's it. That's what all the top players are doing. All the biggest companies in the space are running paid ads. There's no one just doing influencer marketing, I don't think.
Right. Solely organic. Yeah. Solely influencer. No, it's a good point. And so, okay. So let's go back into your shoes. So you basically exited the company. Is there anything that you wish you would have done differently when it came to the exit? I know this is like pretty recent, so you might still be like fresh in this regard. But yeah, just for those who are like considering, you know, exiting their app, or like even just exploring what that process looks like is there anything that you wish you would have thought about more, or perhaps would have taken more time on?
No, I was set on the decision, man.
Yeah.
I knew we were in a really good place. We were scaling really nicely. And I
Hmm.
think that's kind of the point you want to sell.
Hmm.
Um, and it was more so just like a mindset thing for me, because I was focused on this new project and I also had PuffCount on the side. So I was like, okay, I need to free up some mind space here and focus on one thing.
Hmm.
And also having capital to build that new project was like a big factor as well.
Got it. Okay, so that became the priority. So, I think this is like a really good segue into like, um, into how sort of like the initial endeavors of building this app are now clear influences in what you're building next. And so, what I mean by this is like earlier on, we talked about the way that you got this app designed, right? Was you took these sort of like paper sketches and you took them to 99 Designs, where you basically host a contest and designers like compete to like give you the best designs. You pay for it. Tell us a little bit more about like what your next venture is and how that's sort of an influence.
Yeah, 100%. So exactly right. Like I used 99 Designs and I made creative content to promote my app. So
Mhm.
those were two big, pain points for me and really what drove the growth for PuffCount. So I was like, okay, I'm going to build a product that does this for people. So my new project is Posted. It's a mobile app and a web app.
Mhm.
But essentially Posted connects creators and brands. And our core offering is content contests. So a brand can put up a sum of money for a contest. Creators post organically on their own TikTok profiles to
Mhm.
submit content to the contest. And whoever has the most views at the end of the contest gets paid or splits the prize pool, right?
Mhm.
Um, we also have deals where you can work one-on-one with creator and it's
Mhm.
like super efficient, like the stock market. Creators show you the content, they have a bid and you can approve or deny or rebid.
That's so sick.
So we
Yeah.
try to make it as efficient as possible. But yeah, what I came to find out was like the marketing is the most important of these mobile apps. And if we can build that marketing engine and we could be a place where all these people who are building mobile apps or building digital products can go to, I think that would be a killer business idea.
Mhm.
And e-commerce has like e-com products have all these different tools. They have TikTok Shop, they have whatever else it is, but there's nothing really for software products
Mhm.
where you can connect with creators easily. And going back to the early days of PuffCount, I went through this super distortive approach. Emailed like 500 creators,
Right.
four responded,
Right.
and they were like 10 grand for a post, and I'm like,
Right.
I don't have 10 grand, right?
Mhm.
And like, uh, it's just it's a trash system. So we're trying to make it as efficient as possible. And something super interesting too. And I'm going on a rant here, but like 95% of the creators out there don't get any deal flow. The top 5% get all of the deals
Mhm.
with apps, with influencer deals, whatever it is. But the other 95% are super, super hungry
Right.
for cash and like to create a piece of content. They'll do it cheaper for you.
Yeah.
And that's where Posted comes into play. You like the best we're running ads right now for Posted based on a contest that we ran. The best
Mhm.
performing piece of content came from a super small creator who got paid like a small amount of money, right? So
Mhm.
like we're trying to make the market more efficient and find all those hidden pockets.
I love that. I love that you're using the product to grow the product. I feel like that's actually like really high signal for anyone who's like building any kind of like SaaS. I feel like that's like the best marketing that you can do. It kind of ties into that whole like building a product to solve a problem for yourself. So that's sick, number one. Two, that's really interesting because I feel like, you know, like developers, indie app developers, like people have been making apps since like the drink beer app came out on like iPhone, right? Like
I remember that one.
that's not really a new phenomenon, but I do feel like what has made this such a cool like golden age for consumer is that like I feel like it's the ubiquity of distribution access, right? Like everyone can pick up the phone, talk into it, make a TikTok, like that can go viral. Like everyone can then run paid ads on that, right? Like everyone can go like reach out and like find these sort of like undervalued creators. But there's obviously like a lot of friction in that, right? Like you mentioned some pain points, and I feel like it's worth calling these out even more because I don't think people like really internalize and understand that until they get hit with it. And what I'm talking about is like going and hiring an influencer, right? Like, and they have, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000 followers. You pay them an exorbitant fee, like two, three, four, five, $10,000 to make a video, and it gets like 1,000 views and it just flops, right? Like that's painful. And so I think the interesting thing about Posted and just like this whole like era of distribution that a lot of companies are finding a lot of success with is like there's an element of like elbow grease and hustle in it, right? And I think that like Posted, I think is in a really cool position because you're basically saying, hey, we're doing a lot of that work for you, and you're just giving us a cut to basically save you time, right? So you don't have to go through that frustration yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And just trying to make the market more efficient, man.
Hmm.
Like I got burnt early and wasted a lot of money on these creators, and that's exactly why I built the product. And it's not perfect by any means, right?
Right.
And I think a lot of the success with marketing does have to do with the product itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the reason PuffCount crushed on the marketing is because I'm some genius TikTok guy and like I know how to make the best. My TikToks are okay, they're decent. They got good towards the end, but they were decent.
Hmm.
The product itself is a viral product.
Hmm.
So I think that's it plays an important role in the success of your campaigns as well. And like you
Mm.
look at like Cal AI or any of these other apps like Quitter, like
Yeah.
just the using the app or like talking about like quitting, corn, I'll call it just in
Hmm.
case we put this anywhere. Like
Hmm.
that's a viral concept itself. So,
Hmm.
I think there's two sides of the marketing, right? There's the
Hmm.
product and then the creative.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's talk about that a little bit more because I think that like this is something where it's easy to understand when you see it, but it might be hard to like verbalize for those who don't really like understand beforehand. And what I mean is like it kind of all ties back to like what you were saying earlier on in the conversation, right? Where you start with like the idea of distribution, like start with marketing. Like um we can take like puff count, like literally tapping a button and see number go up. Like that is something that is like very intriguing to watch for on a screen, right? Like that is like people can understand that. Like Cal AI's mechanism of like taking a photo of food, right? Like that's like inherently very visual. Like that's super interesting. Um, so like let can you explain like what you mean by like viral concept? Because I think a lot of people kind of just filter that into like, oh, I need to have like massive distribution, but I feel like it's something more about like the product development itself, and it starts with thinking about like what does this look like if I'm seeing it through like a TikTok ad or something.
I'll tell anyone this is the easiest way to understand if your product has viral potential or not. Go onto TikTok, type in a keyword related to your product, and see how many videos it has.
Mm-hmm.
If I type in macro tracking or vaping or
Hmm.
quitting, corn or whatever,
Right.
they're all gonna have billions and billions, hundreds of billions of views on TikTok.
Hmm.
But if I type in, some obscure B2B, Zapier
Right.
integration for Google Sheets,
Right.
it's gonna have 30 videos.
Right.
There's no way on the planet you can expect to go mega viral with that type of product.
Hmm.
You just can't.
Hmm.
So again, like you said, like the distribution first, like understand if this is something that you can run organic content on.
Hmm.
And if you can't, it's okay. There's a place and a time for those B2B products, but you have to take a different approach. You have to run paid ads.
Hmm.
And that's not to say you can't run organic content. You should always run organic content, but you're going to have to grow through paid ads. It's not going to go viral organically because it's
Right.
not a viral concept. The
Right.
total addressable market just isn't there. It's not interesting enough to be on TikTok.
Right. Okay, so that's also really interesting because you talk about TAM, and it's like you said that early on when you were starting out, you saw that there were apps to help like curb like cigarette addiction, right? And like dude, I think that's another really interesting part about this whole era is like you can make a lot of money building like a more niche like form of something that already has like a lot of traction, right? Like as an example, I mean, I think Cal AI is like pretty novel, and there have been a lot of copycats of Cal AI who also make
Yeah.
a lot of money. Like, are
Yeah.
they dominating the market? Like, no. And then this is not me like endorsing copycats in any way. More so, it's just like saying like you can like in your example, right? Like I feel like it would have been easy to fall into the trap of like, oh, of course these apps will also just like solve the same problem for vapes, right? But like that's not always the case. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, and this is a trap that, a lot of people who ask me for us too, they're like, hey, I already have a competitor, they're already crushing it. It doesn't matter. You know how many people on the planet have a smartphone? Billions. You know what I mean? Like there is no there like and you look at, you look at the quit smoking market, like the TAM, that's like a multi-billion dollar industry. I don't need all of it.
Mhm.
I don't need 10% of it. I need like 3%, 2%, 1% of that market to change my life, which is
Mhm.
what it did.
Mhm.
Like in the grand scheme of things, PuffCount was not a big company,
Mhm.
but it was life changing for me as like a solo founder. So that's
Right.
all you need, right? Like don't be afraid of the competitors. Having competitors, having competition in the app space is a good thing. You
Mhm.
want that positive signal that other people are making money in the space.
Mhm.
Don't copycat and don't rip off other ideas. Like that's lame. and
Right.
not cool, and it's not going to
Right.
be fulfilling for you. But
Right.
that's a positive signal for any founder if like there's other people in the space crushing it.
100%. Like there's so much wealth in the world. There isn't like it's really it's like hard to fathom how many people there are on Earth. And you can take just a teeny slice of all that wealth, and like it can be life changing for you.
You can, it's unimaginable how many people there are, and like that's why there's like this glass ceiling effect that founders have. They're like afraid to enter some sort of market, but
Mhm.
you should go for it.
Love that. Okay, so now I think the really interesting thing about like your story is like you kind of were like scrappy the whole way throughout, and you didn't let these like obstacles of like I can't like build this thing all by myself like stop me, right? Like I think that's a really interesting mindset. I think the sort of like flavor of the month that people have been using to describe that, and I'm sure people will like use this 20 years from now, is like agency. Like agency, and what that really means is just like can you figure it out, like for in short, right? Like can you figure out a way to get around it? um yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about like what that was like? Like, why didn't these things deter you? Or, did you like how were you able to like have this sort of mindset where it's just like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm gonna figure it out?
I think dude, it came early on, like just being a founder and trying all these different business models. Like I
Mhm.
just wanted it so bad. And I was like, I don't care if it fails. Like I'm just going to try to figure this out. And
Mhm.
I did that with other businesses in the past. And then, eventually you do make it work.
Mhm.
And I had the same approach with apps. Like you're never going to have it all figured out. I didn't on PuffCount. I don't on my new project still today. In like today, I have problems that I don't know how to solve,
Mhm.
but I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep trying to grow. And eventually I'm going to solve these problems. And like, that's the mindset that you need to have as a founder. Like that is your job. It's never going to be the perfect moment. You're never going to have everything planned out perfectly. There's going to be things that break, but that's like part of the fun of the game. And
Totally.
that's where the value comes in too. Like if it was easy to do and everyone knew how to do it, like there'd be no value in being a founder.
Mhm.
Solving these problems and overcoming these roadblocks is like how you create value.
Right. It's like the uncertainty is where the advantage is, right? Like being able to live with that uncertainty is where the value is. Like that's where you create it. That's where you capture it.
It's a drug.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you're like some people just really have it, you know. Some people are like love it, even just purely out of love of the game. So I know I think that's incredible. I feel like you really have that.
Thank you, bro.
Okay, so let's take a step back. I think it'd be really interesting to hear about like Wordle, because I think that that's like a really interesting story that you have, and it might give people a little bit more insight into like maybe some of the like the business acumen and like just sort of like your outlook towards like doing the right thing. So would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, 100%. So I started building mobile apps when I was in high school, and I built a couple little games. One of them was called Grid, which was like a puzzle game, and then that one had decent amount of success. I like promoted it on Twitter, and it crushed. Like it did pretty well for a high school kid. I was
Mhm.
making a couple G's a month, so I was like, all right, cool, I want to do this again. So I built a word game and I called it Wordle. And I considered it like a dead project because it didn't have, the growth potential that the other project did. So I like set it aside. This
Mhm.
was like 2016, 2017. And then December of 2020, like early 2021, I wake up. I think I was at my parents' house for Christmas. I wake up and my App Store Connect dashboard has like 500,000 downloads in a single day on my old app
Crazy.
Wordle. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, this has to be fake traffic. This is bot traffic. This is someone
Mhm.
trying to manipulate this.
Mhm.
I Google Wordle and it's the New York Times article pops up. It says Wordle's a love story.
Mhm.
I'm like, there's no way they could be talking about my crappy little game that I built when I was in high school, right? So come to
Right.
find out that another developer, his name is Josh Wardle,
Mhm.
built a browser game, which is called Wordle. You can only play it on the browser, right?
Mhm.
And it was going mega viral. Everyone's sharing it across Twitter. You have the yellow and green bricks everywhere, right? And people are searching for this game. But if you search for a game, you're going to go to the App Store. You're not going on the
Right.
desktop, right?
Right.
So everybody goes to the App Store. They type in Wordle. My app shows up. And overnight, like Wordle is like number one on the App Store because
Crazy,
like
right?
just because I had the same name, right? Like
Right.
the game was similar, but it wasn't the same. And it started going crazy. So the second I realized it was happening, like that morning when I figured it out, I DM'd Josh and I was like, yo, dude, this is not supposed to be happening. I'm
Mhm.
making a little bit of money here.
Mhm.
Would love to like connect and see if we can donate this. And he pinged me
Yeah.
back and he was like, bro, this is crazy. Yeah, let's do it. Here's my email. So we went back and forth.
Yeah.
But that was, dude, that was just the beginning. Like I told all my friends and my family and they were like, cool, Steven. Like, so what? But that was like day one. And then the next day I had like 700,000 downloads,
Mhm.
800,000, not a million, 2 million.
Mhm.
And then it became global. I started getting hit up by reporters. I was going to like my life changed overnight. And for the next 6 months, like this is all anyone could talk about. It was the most Googled word of the year.
Crazy.
It was the
Crazy.
most Googled word of the year. And it was a crazy experience, man. And like one thing that happened too, which really, skyrocketed the growth was like, we're talking about copycats. Like everyone launched an app called Wordle. Like there
Yeah.
was like 50 developers who did this
Yeah.
and they tried to rip off the exact game. And it became a huge problem and people were getting pissed. So Apple removed all of those, but they didn't remove mine
Really?
because mine was built in 2016. And
Right.
they're like, yo, this kid didn't copy it. Like this is
Right.
it.
Right.
This
Right.
is the game. It's been on the store for 10 years.
Mhm.
So they removed all the copycats. Mine was the only Wordle there. And that, like, after that, it was game over. Like it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like I was staying up, like watching my dashboard and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, man, I don't own the project anymore. My camera's overheating, so sorry.
All right,
Uh,
so we're back. Basically, it was just saying that like, dude, Steven had like every developer's dream where woke up and there were like 500,000 downloads on the App Store. Apple started taking down the inevitable copycats. And yeah, you're just like, what a crazy experience, to be like, dude, how are 500,000 people like downloading my app?
it was life changing, man. It was a life changing experience, and I think it was like God's plan for sure. And like that. It shouldn't have happened to me. So it was definitely, I don't know. I think the ultimate purpose of that was to give me some sort of platform and like encourage other entrepreneurs to take a bet on themselves, because that's truly what happened. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
I was in high school trying to make it work, trying to build apps, and 6 years later, like it blew up. So you never know what can. And even with PuffCount, like you look at PuffCount,
Totally.
I worked on PuffCount for months and months and months with no real return on that. But
Mhm.
the return came, down the line when I figured out TikTok marketing. So I just kept at it. I didn't give up, and
Totally.
I kept working on new stuff that I thought was interesting. So yeah, man. Um, don't own the project anymore, which
Yeah.
was crazy too. That was very cool.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's it. And my proudest moment of that was I was able to donate to a charity in Oakland. It was like an after school charity
That's so
for
sick.
kids. So yeah, it was
Yeah,
awesome.
doing the right thing. I love that. Okay, so wait, you touched on something super interesting there, which is like you didn't see a lot of progress with Puff Count, like sort of to start, right? You didn't have that like light bulb moment until you made that TikTok, and like the third one like finally took off after, doing this for a while.
Right.
Um, do you feel like people just give up too quickly? Like, is that really what prevents a lot of people from like finding success?
100%. 100%. And it's hard to know as a founder if like your idea sucks or you're just
Mhm.
not trying hard enough.
Mhm.
But I think it's something that you learn.
Mhm.
Like there's signals that you start to see like early on in a project. And again, this goes back to like validating your idea before you start building. Like as long as it's marketable, you're probably you're gonna be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it's hard to know. But I think in general, people give up too easy.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. So that's like the main challenge of like being an entrepreneur or founder, right? So just like dealing with that uncertainty. Like, dude, is this gonna make it? Is it not? Do I have what it takes? Like, but there's only really one way to find out, right?
Yeah, and it's hard to know if like you picked the right vessel. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, were
Mhm.
there more lucrative opportunities for me than making a quit vaping app?
Yeah.
Maybe, but
Yeah.
that's the one I chose, and I
Yeah. I
made the
like
most of
that.
it.
Sticking with it. Okay, so I have a few questions that are just like a little bit like quicker, more sort of like hot take questions, just to get like sort of like a temp check on like current situation. So I think for a long time, like building in public was like this really like cool thing. A lot of indie devs used it, I think, just because it was like a way for them to market what they were building on, and it was like sort of like an inadvertent marketing. Do you feel like now like building in public is actually like a smart thing to do now that like the cost of like creating something is just like going, slowly towards zero? Like, is building in public still worth it?
Here's what I think, man. I think once your product is launched, it's out there.
Mhm.
So people are gonna know about it, right? Like, I wouldn't be afraid. People ask me all the time, like, were you afraid of like hiring developers? Like, were they gonna steal your idea? Why are
Mhm.
you talking about your product? Are you making people sign NDAs? And like early on as a young entrepreneur, yeah, 100%, I was
Yeah.
scared.
Yeah.
But I think as you start to kind of evolve in the entrepreneurial journey, you understand the idea really is worth nothing and the execution is everything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we keep talking about Cal AI. Shout out
Yeah.
Zach, by the way.
Yeah.
Like there's a million copycats of his, but no one is executing quite like he is, right?
Mhm.
Um, so building a public, is it a bad thing? No. Is it for everyone? No.
Mhm.
Um, does it serve a purpose in every business? No.
Mhm.
But it's been extremely valuable for me in my new project because I'm marketing to business owners. It's a
Mhm.
B2B product. There's a mobile app side, which is B2C, but like
Yeah.
it has been extremely valuable to grow my personal brand and build in public, on YouTube, on Twitter, whatever it is, and it's paid dividends for me.
Mhm.
So I think it just depends on what type of business you're building and kind of where you're at as a founder. I
Mhm.
learned a lot from like, the guys like Alex Becker,
Mhm.
or Hormozy, right? Who are kind of
Mhm.
like putting themselves out there, talking about their experience. I think there's a time and a place for it.
I love that. Earlier on, we talked about, you sort of like relying on your heart for conviction to start PuffCount and then, relying on data once you were able to get like users flowing in. How do you
Right.
toe that line between like trusting your gut and, relying on like data-driven decisions?
In the early stages, you just got to trust your gut because you're not going to have any feedback.
Mhm.
But then again, after you launch and after you get some people into your app, the decisions become much easier
Mhm.
because you can just do them based on what's happening, based on what you're seeing.
Mhm.
Amplitude, mixed panel, throw that in your app,
Yeah.
understand what everyone is doing and how they're doing it, why they're doing it, and then that's how you really scale. I think when you start to scale is when you make the data driven decisions.
Mhm.
But in the beginning, you have to go for it.
Go trust the gut. Got it. How do you think about being like a solo founder versus like building out a small team to attack a business like this?
Oh, dude. Um, it's interesting, right? Because, you know, I think having a co-founder is like a marriage.
I agree. I
And
agree.
dude, you got to trust each other.
Yeah.
And that relationship can get tough sometimes. And like I think there has to be some sort of the power dynamic needs to be known. There has to be one leader
Mhm.
or like an odd number, like three. So there's always one decision that can be made. But if there's two people with like equal decision making and like you're butting heads on things,
Mhm.
I think it gets tough. Like in the later stages of the business, when things start to really grow, I think in the beginning stages, it's nice and it's fun to like work with your friend and like do all this stuff, and you can
Mhm.
go faster and farther together. But it just depends, right? Like it depends on what your situation is. I have great people on my team at my new
Mhm.
project. Zach,
Mhm.
who is our lead designer, Yuri, who is our lead CTO, but
Mhm.
ultimately, like I'm the founder driving the vision.
Right.
And it's great. Like I outsource my weaknesses and I trust my team with everything. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like if Yuri, my developer, has a decision, he's like, we should do this. I'm like, I trust you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the spot you need to be as a founder, like building a team, whether you have a co-founder, whether you have a team, whatever it is. Building a team is one of the most essential parts of being a founder. And I think it's something people sleep on a lot. Like
Mhm.
you could even look at the flip side. Like people are very obsessed with like doing this one man business thing because like they want to have it all. But like,
Right.
I don't think it's not sustainable.
Right. Got it. Yeah, yeah. Like you need to be able to like there's a whole set of tasks that you need to do, right? And it's like whether you're going to do all of them or you're going to split it with like one other person or two other people, like there needs to be some way to like resolve basically like conflicts or tension in terms of like if you have an argument about like the best way to do something, or you just trust your team to like, you know, carry those duties out and execute faithfully. Um, okay, so here's another one. Like, dude, do you feel like we've seen a ton of success from like really, really young entrepreneurs? Do you feel like they have an edge just because they have like less experience and sort of like less bruised ego? Or, or do like more seasoned founders like outperform them by being able to like leverage that experience?
Yeah, I think having a little bit of delusion or like is definitely beneficial because you just go for things and you kind of just figure it out as you go.
Mhm.
Do they have an advantage? I would say in some ways yes. Like you have less risk as a young guy, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's more impressive as a young guy, and you get a little bit more support as a young guy,
Mhm.
and you have less things, less like glass ceilings because you think anything is possible. But at the same time, you know, more seasoned entrepreneurs, they've seen these things before
Mhm.
and they know what decisions to make and they know how to hire a team and how to properly scale, like raise money, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So I think there's pros and cons. I think every young entrepreneur everyone starts that way. It's like a young,
Right.
guy with like no clue what's going on. And then you
Right.
fail and you learn and you become the old head. You become Unk.
Right. You become monk. You become
I got called,
monk.
bro. I posted a piece of content. Someone called me Unk. I was like, dude, there's no way you're calling me Unk right now. I can't be. I'm not that old.
PuffCount Unk. That's really funny, dude.
I'll
I love
take it.
that. And then I guess this is sort of like the last to just cap off like the rapid fire questions. Like, how do you feel about like pursuing more like bootstrapped business, like versus going sort of like the venture capital route?
I've never raised money a day in my life.
Mhm.
I don't know. I've heard very mixed opinions. I think it just, again, this is like a, something that you have to decide as a founder. I like freedom. I like cash flow businesses. I like businesses that get to profitability really quickly. But I have never had experience raising money. So I can't even speak on that. But what I know is I like to build businesses that generate monthly recurring revenue. Like that. I
Mhm.
was always obsessed with that. Like even when I was younger, I was like, I want to be able to sleep and my business makes money. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
all the cliche things that you hear, but it is true. Like that is what, the foundation of my business is built on.
Mhm.
PuffCount, my new project, it's like, that's what I go for.
Mhm.
And I like to live a lifestyle of freedom. Like I was just traveling around the world for like the past 10 months.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been able to do that had I like raised a bunch of venture capital and I had people like, investors calling me all the time. Like there's no way I would have been able to do that. So I think it's
Right.
more of like a lifestyle choice
Right.
more than like a business decision,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Right. No, I like that. And then, that reminds me of like, I feel like a lot of people talk about like having this sort of burnout after you went through like the process of like exiting PuffCount after working on it for 4 years. It sounds like you took a trip. Dude, do you like, how impactful is that to like unplug for a little bit and like take some time to like recharge, like get the creative juices flowing again? Like, is that sort of what you intended for the trip? Did
Yes.
you feel like you found that? Like, what was that like?
100%. So the reason I left is because I was in LA, I whatever was living the lifestyle that I think, the 16-year-old me wanted, but it was like the
Mhm.
same thing over and over again. I didn't really feel inspired. Again, I was just checking my ads dashboard, making sure everything was good. I was living the same day over and over. And I was like, I just have to get out. I have to get away.
Mhm.
I have to disconnect from everyone. I have to go lock in and like figure out what my next move is, personally, professionally, whatever it
Mhm.
was.
Mhm.
And I traveled, man. I started in Argentina, went to Bali, went to Thailand, bounced around over there, went to
Yeah.
Europe, went to South Africa, and I was
Yeah.
gone for 10 months. And bro, it was incredible. It was like super eye opening. It was a
Mhm.
creative experience for me, experiencing other cultures. Being alone, I did it solo. I traveled with
Mhm.
some friends here and there, but
Mhm.
a lot of it was solo too. And like,
Mhm.
it gives you confidence. And I think
Mhm.
every solo
Mhm.
founder should do this at some point. It gives you confidence personally. It opens your eyes to all the opportunities out there, all the different cultures. And it's fun.
I love that.
It's
I love that.
fun,
No,
bro.
no, absolutely. I agree with you completely on that. Um how did you have ideas of like just being like a nomadic founder? Like Levels IO on Twitter, like did that cross your mind at all? Or did you know that like once you had a more clear idea of what you wanted to tackle next that you would need a home base?
Nah, dude. I mean, it was cool for the 10 months, but by the end of it, I was like, all right, I need to get home because
Yeah.
like by this point, I was building my new project and like I couldn't even enjoy the travel that much because
You're so locked in.
the rest of the world is amazing. Europe is amazing. Bali is amazing, but in the U.S.,
Mhm.
everything's very efficient. It
Mhm.
works 90% of the time. You know what I mean? So like it's easier. And I look at my setup now, like triple monitor, nice
Mhm.
PC. I was working on my laptop,
Mhm.
which is cool to like focus and like, there's not much distracting you, but I'm a type of guy like I need a setup, I need a solid routine. And traveling that much wasn't really like conducive, but I think like if I had done it a different way and like stayed somewhere for 6 months, then it could have made more sense. But
Right.
I was eager to like, see a lot of places. So I was bouncing around a lot. So it was hard to like juggle those things.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, you needed to be able to like have a little bit more like reliable sort of facilities to be able to like hit that concentration.
Yeah.
I think some of the like questions that are lingering, at least from my perspective, are like, dude, say you're you're the how old were you in 20 like whatever you're the 2020 version of yourself, right?
Sure.
And you're like you haven't started PuffCount and it's today. Like, how would you approach building an app whether, you know, it's PuffCount or something else, how would you approach that doing today? Like, how would you start? Like, how would you think about going through TikTok distribution? It might be the same. It might be the same way that you did it. But if you were to, you know, take like your younger self and put him in your shoes today, how would you think about approaching that sort of problem?
I think coming up with the idea probably wouldn't change. Like I would validate with marketing first. Like I would see and make sure that the problem is out there and it's like going viral on social media or other apps are crushing the space. So from the idea standpoint, I wouldn't change much. From the building standpoint, you have so many different options now.
So many.
When I built PuffCount, there was you had to code, you had to open up Xcode and you had to write the thing, or you had to hire someone to do it. So I hired someone, right?
Right.
I think now, you know, the AI tools, they're almost there. I think they get you a decent amount of the way there, but you still need to have some sort of understanding, some sort of technical ability to like get it that last, you know, 20, 30%, whatever it is. So you can do that. And, you know, it's interesting. Like I probably wouldn't go the AI route. I would do what I know, which is hire developers. And here's the way I put it, right? Like the AI tools are amazing, but in my mind, it's like a Tesla. Like you're not super technical, so you're a 10-year-old driving a Tesla. Are you going to get there? Sure. Are you going to hit a little bumps along the way? For sure. Is your product going to be perfect? No. But my developer is Lewis Hamilton in an F1 car.
Right.
He has all the tools. He's going to go much faster. It's going to be a much cleaner ride. It's going to like, he's like going to go much faster and it's going to be nice and top tier. You're a 10-year-old in a Tesla. So like, that's the way I kind of compare the two. Again, I think 6 to 8 months from now, 12 months from now, the AI tools are going to be really damn close. But if I was to start again, I would do the same thing I did.
Same thing. And for your new ventures, are you you're using effectively like a developer team, right? You have someone who's technical, who's handling it, and you're handling like marketing, growth, that sort of thing. Got it. Okay. I mean, yeah, it worked once. Why change it if it's not broken? Okay, cool. So I think one of the other questions that I have is just like, dude, this is something that I love to ask people because sometimes it just like flips the dynamic. It's really interesting. Like, is there anything that I've asked you that you or something that you wish I would ask you? Like, is there anything that you haven't talked about that you're dying to talk about?
I think your last question would have been it, like the AI, because that's all the rage right now. Everyone's like, open Replit, open, you know, all these other tools. I think it's interesting, man. Like, dude, the world is changing so fast, and like I don't know whether to be. I mean, I generally think it's going to be a good thing, but I think it's going to be so interesting, man. Like in a world where everyone can build an app, what does that look like?
What does it even look like?
Is everyone building apps for themselves personally, and like you have your own personal set of apps on your phone that you use? Like that becomes interesting to me. So, bro, I think the space is just getting started, and I've experienced this growth like on my YouTube channel too. Like the growth has been crazy, and I think a lot of people are just entering the space, and I think apps are truly like the next wave of like, you know, e-commerce was the biggest thing like a couple of years ago. So now I think apps are going to be that, software is going to be that, and the evolution of these AI tools is going to allow more and more people to do that. And I'm trying to position myself with the new project to like capture, you know what I mean? Like be ahead of the curve a little bit. But dude, I'm excited for the space, man. I think this is going to enable a lot of founders like myself. You know, when I was 16, I didn't know what to do. And now I think there's a lot of people to look up to you. And I think, you know, SaaS and mobile apps are an incredible business model. So I'm excited, man.
100%. I feel like entrepreneurship is like much more accessible now than ever, right? Like anyone literally today, you could go out and you could build an app in like a week. You could market it on TikTok yourself. Like you could make people talk about like internet money. Like people talk like, I think it's a really worthwhile goal to strive for like making your first dollar on the internet. Not necessarily because it's like, you know, whatever, it's like $1, but because it like forces you to learn these different sets of skills in terms of like what it takes to create like an internet business, right? And I think that's kind of like why people extol it so much. Like that's why there's so many virtues around it.
And skills stack, man. Like all the skills that you learn building these internet businesses will stack on top of each other, and then eventually you're just like this super powerful founder who can, you know, build anything. And internet businesses are dope, man. There's unlimited scale. PuffCount is on the store. It's going to be there forever. If the new owners of that never touched a single line of code and they just marketed it, it would still work. That's the craziest part. And as a founder, as a young founder, especially with the AI tools, like imagine you have a portfolio of 5 different apps. and you're growing each one of them, and like they have a couple $100 a month or a couple $1,000 a month in revenue,
Yeah.
you have a portfolio of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's sick. So I think I'm excited for the young founders out there who are diving into this stuff, because I think there's so much opportunity.
Absolutely, really sick. And like, again, the main lever mechanism for that is these like new distribution channels. And so with that, dude, where can people go to find out more about Posted? Where can they go to find more about you, your story, PuffCount? Like what's the best way for people to find you on the internet?
Yeah, if you want to check out Posted, go to postedapp.com, POSTED, Posted. If you want to check me out on social media, I'm on Twitter, YouTube, just my full name, Steven Cravotta. You can find me there.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. It's been a blast chatting with you.
Dude, thank you so much, Taylor. Wait, before we go, well, I'm the biggest fan of Superwall. Like your tool was, instrumental in growing, scaling PuffCount. So everyone should definitely try Superwall. Do you know who the #1 affiliate for Superwall is?
Who is that?
It's me.
It's you. Is that true?
Just so we have that on record.
I love that.
Ask Jake.
The biggest evangelist of Superwall.
Yeah, ask Jake. When I was in the office and hanging out with, like, he showed me the data. I'm the #1 guy. I think right behind your paywallscreens.com website.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. We'll be sure to include that and make that much more noticeable.
For the record.
Jake will love that. Yeah. #1 affiliate. Love that. We heard it here first. Yeah, man, dude, appreciate it. It's been a blast chatting with you. And good luck on all your new ventures, man. Stoked to see what comes out of it.
Thank you for having me, man.